I stared at my phone screen, reading the text message for the third time. The words hadn't changed, but somehow I kept hoping they would. "We disown you. From now on, talk to my lawyer." The message came from my mother's number, but the cold, clinical tone belonged to my father. 20 seconds later, my sister Ashley's text appeared with a pink heart emoji. "You're on your own." I set the phone down on my kitchen counter and looked around my modest apartment. After 28 years of being the Hartwell family's golden boy, everything had crumbled in a single evening. The silence felt deafening. Outside my window, Hartford's evening traffic hummed along Interstate 84, but inside my apartment time seemed frozen. I picked up my phone again, typed one word, and hit send. "Okay." Then I turned off my phone and sat in the growing darkness, feeling a strange mixture of heartbreak and relief wash over me. For months, I had been carrying a burden that was slowly destroying my soul. Now, with my family's ultimatum delivered and my response sent, I knew there was no going back. What they didn't realize was that their decision to cut me off had just set something much bigger into motion. 3 months earlier, my life looked completely different. My name is Davis Hartwell, and at 28 years old, I had everything a young professional could want. Harvard MBA, 6-figure salary corner office at Hartwell Financial Services, the prestigious accounting firm my parents built from nothing into a Connecticut powerhouse. I was the eldest son, the heir apparent, the one who would carry our family legacy forward. My father, Robert Hartwell, started the firm 32 years ago with nothing but a small business loan and determination. My mother, Linda, managed the client relations, while Robert handled the complex financial strategies that made wealthy families even wealthier. They specialized in serving manufacturing executives, technology entrepreneurs, and old money families who trusted the Hartwell name with their most precious assets. I had worked at the firm for 5 years, climbing from junior analyst to senior partner track, always feeling the weight of family expectations on my shoulders. My sister Ashley, 26 and sharp as a razor, ran our marketing department with the same ruthless efficiency that made our parents successful. We were the perfect American success story featured in Connecticut Business Magazine as the next generation of financial excellence. But success has a way of hiding ugly truths, and the truth I discovered that Tuesday morning in March changed everything I thought I knew about my family. I was reviewing quarterly reports for Thompson Manufacturing, our biggest client. Thomas Thompson had built his company from a small machine shop into a major supplier for aerospace companies, employing over 800 people across 3 states. The pension fund we managed for his workers represented their life savings, their dreams of retirement security. The numbers didn't add up. At first, I assumed it was a clerical error. Pension fund transfers often involved multiple accounts and complex routing procedures. But when I dug deeper into the digital records, I found a pattern that made my stomach drop. Money was being transferred from the Thompson Pension Fund into shell companies with names like Hartford Investment Solutions and Connecticut Capital Management. These weren't legitimate investment vehicles. They were phantoms. I spent the next week working late every night cross-referencing bank records and investment statements. What I discovered was systematic theft on a massive scale. My parents had been skimming money from client accounts for over 7 years, using sophisticated accounting tricks to hide the missing funds. The shell companies all traced back to personal accounts controlled by Robert and Linda Hartwell. When I finally worked up the courage to confront my father, I found him in his office late on a Thursday evening, reviewing the same reports I had been studying. He looked up when I knocked on his doorframe, his tired eyes meeting mine across his mahogany desk. "Dad, we need to talk about the Thompson account." His expression didn't change, but I saw his shoulders tense. "What about it?" I sat down across from him and spread out the printouts I had compiled. "The pension fund transfers. Where is this money actually going?" For a long moment he said nothing. Then he leaned back in his leather chair and rubbed his temples. Davis, there are complexities to running a business that you don't understand yet. Then help me understand why Thompson Manufacturing's pension fund is missing $2.3 million. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Finally, Robert looked directly at me and said, "We borrowed it." Borrowed it. The firm went through some difficult years during the recession. We needed capital to stay afloat to keep everyone employed. The client accounts were earning lower returns anyway, so we temporarily redirected some funds to keep the business operational. I felt the floor shifting beneath me. "Dad, that's embezzlement." "That's survival." He snapped, his voice rising for the first time. "Do you think I wanted to touch client money? Do you think I enjoyed making those decisions? But sometimes you have to choose between following rules and protecting your family's livelihood." I stared at the man who had raised me, taught me about integrity and hard work, and realized I was looking at a stranger. "How much total?" He hesitated, then opened his laptop and pulled up a spreadsheet. "Across all affected accounts, about $4.7 million. My heart stopped. All affected accounts. How many clients? Robert turned the laptop screen toward me and I saw a list that made me physically nauseous. 17 different client accounts had been systematically drained. Pension funds, college savings accounts, retirement portfolios. All stolen, all covered up with fake investment reports and forged documentation. "Dad, these people trusted us with their life savings." "And they'll get every penny back," he said defensively. "We've been paying back the principal plus interest. The market recovery has been stronger than expected, so we're actually ahead of schedule on restoration." I scrolled through the spreadsheet, seeing names I recognized. The Johnsons, who had saved for 40 years to retire comfortably. The Martinez family, whose college fund for their twin daughters had been invested in overseas markets. The Thompson pension fund that represented security for hundreds of factory workers. "Does Mom know?" "Of course she knows. And so does Ashley." The final piece of my world crumbled. My entire family was complicit in a massive fraud that had been happening under my nose for years. I had been working diligently to serve our clients while my own family was systematically robbing them. "How could you involve Ashley in this?" "Ashley helped create the marketing materials that justified the account transfers. She's brilliant at making complex financial movements sound like innovative investment strategies." I stood up on shaking legs. "I need time to process this." "Davis, I understand this is shocking, but you need to see the bigger picture. We saved the firm, we saved jobs, and we're making our clients whole again. Sometimes doing the right thing means breaking a few rules." I walked out of his office without another word, my mind reeling with the implications of what I had learned. The drive home was a blur, and I spent that entire night pacing my apartment trying to figure out what to do with information that could destroy my family and devastate the lives of innocent clients who still didn't know their money had been stolen. But the worst revelation was yet to come. The next morning, I returned to the office with a simple demand: my parents had to immediately confess their crimes and return every stolen dollar. I found them both in the conference room, along with Ashley, who looked like she had been crying. "I've been thinking about our conversation." I began taking a seat at the polished table where we had held hundreds of client meetings. "You need to contact every affected client today and explain what happened. Full disclosure, full restitution, and cooperation with any legal proceedings they want to pursue." My mother spoke first, her voice trembling but determined. "Davis, honey, I know this is difficult to understand, but what your father did saved this company and protected our employees. We can't just throw that away by confessing to something that's already being fixed." "Mom, it's theft. It doesn't matter if you're paying it back. You stole millions of dollars from people who trusted us." Ashley leaned forward, her marketing instincts kicking in. "Davis, you're being incredibly naive about how business actually works. Do you think every successful company got there by following every single rule? Sometimes you have to be creative with cash flow management." Creative cash flow management. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You're talking about pension funds, Ashley. These are people's retirement dreams. Robert cleared his throat and pulled out a folder. Davis, I'm prepared to offer you a full partnership in the firm effective immediately, 40% ownership decision-making authority, and a guarantee that every client account will be restored to full value plus interest within 18 months. The bribe was so blatant that I almost laughed. You think you can buy my silence? I think I can recognize your value to this family business and compensate you accordingly, he replied smoothly. You're clearly ready for increased responsibility. I looked around the table at my family, seeing them clearly for the first time. They weren't evil people, but they had made a series of choices that led them down a path where stealing from innocent families seemed justifiable. The worst part was that they genuinely believed they were the heroes of this story. I can't be part of this, I said quietly. The room erupted. Ashley accused me of being self-righteous and ungrateful. My mother talked about family loyalty and how I was betraying everything they had built. My father warned me about the consequences of destroying our reputation and throwing away a legacy that took decades to create. But I had made my decision. Over the next 6 weeks, I lived in a nightmare. Family dinners became battlegrounds of guilt manipulation and barely concealed threats. Ashley would corner me at work, alternating between tearful pleas and vicious personal attacks. My parents offered increasingly desperate bribes, from cash payments to vacation homes to promises of running the firm my way. When none of that worked, they escalated to threats. Robert suggested that I might be held liable for the theft myself, since I had been reviewing accounts for years without noticing anything suspicious. Linda mentioned that I had signed off on some of the questionable transfers without realizing their true nature, making me an accessory after the fact. The pressure was suffocating, but it also strengthened my resolve. I realized that my family had become so corrupted by their crimes that they were willing to destroy me rather than face the consequences of their actions. During this time, I secretly began documenting everything. Connecticut is a one-party consent state for recording conversations, so I recorded every family meeting where they discussed the theft or tried to silence me. I photographed documents, copied computer files, and maintained detailed notes of every confession and threat. I also reached out to Jake Morrison, my roommate from law school, who now worked as a federal prosecutor in New York. Over beers at a quiet restaurant in Stamford, I explained the situation without naming names or providing specific details. Hypothetically, I said, if someone discovered large-scale embezzlement at their workplace, what would be the right way to report it? Jake studied me carefully. Hypothetically, that person should contact federal authorities immediately. The FBI has a financial crimes unit that specializes in investment fraud. The longer they wait, the more evidence gets destroyed and the more people get hurt. And what if the workplace happens to be a family business? That makes it harder emotionally, but not legally. White-collar crime is still crime regardless of family relationships. In fact, family businesses often get away with fraud longer precisely because people are reluctant to report their relatives. Jake gave me contact information for FBI Special Agent Maria Rodriguez, who specialized in financial crimes cases. He also recommended an employment attorney who could protect me from retaliation, and a personal lawyer who could ensure my cooperation with authorities wouldn't expose me to liability. I spent sleepless nights wrestling with the decision, but every time I wavered, I thought about the Thompson manufacturing workers who had no idea their pension fund had been raided. I thought about elderly clients who trusted us with their life savings, while my family lived lavishly off their stolen money. The final straw came during a family dinner at my parents' house, their beautiful colonial home that I now knew was purchased with embezzled funds. Over my mother's famous pot roast served on china bought with stolen money, my father made one last attempt to bring me into line. Davis, I'm going to be direct. You can either accept your partnership offer and help us finish restoring the client accounts quietly, or you can find yourself unemployed and unemployable in this industry. I have friends at every major firm in Connecticut. One word from me, and you'll never work in finance again." I looked around the dinner table at my family, all of them nodding in agreement with Robert's ultimatum. My mother was dabbing her eyes with a napkin, playing the role of heartbroken matriarch. Ashley was filming herself with her phone, probably preparing social media content about her difficult brother who was tearing the family apart. That's when I realized I had to make a choice between being complicit in ongoing crimes or losing my family forever. I chose integrity. "I'll give you one more chance," I said calmly. "Contact Agent Rodriguez at the FBI tomorrow morning and volunteer full cooperation. Return every stolen dollar and accept whatever legal consequences you've earned. Do that, and I'll support you through the aftermath." The silence was deafening. Then Robert slammed his hand on the table hard enough to rattle the dishes. "How dare you threaten this family? How dare you sit in our house, eat our food, and then threaten to destroy everything we've built?" "I'm not threatening you, Dad. I'm offering you a way out that preserves some shred of dignity." Ashley put down her phone and leaned across the table. "Davis, if you even think about going to the authorities, I will personally make sure everyone knows you were part of this from the beginning. I have documentation showing you approved transfers and signed off on investment reports. You'll go down with us." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my phone. With a simple tap, I played back the conversation we had just had, including Ashley's threat to frame me and Robert's admission that they had been stealing from clients for years. "I've been recording our conversations for 6 weeks," I said quietly. "I have everything documented, including your confessions and attempts to obstruct justice. The only question now is whether you're going to cooperate voluntarily or wait for federal agents to show up with search warrants." My family stared at me in shock, finally understanding that their golden boy had been playing a different game entirely. I stood up from the dinner table, walked to the front door, and left their house for what I knew would be the last time as a member of their family. The disowning text came that evening, followed by Ashley's mocking message. I responded with a single word and turned off my phone, knowing that by this time tomorrow, everything would change. The confrontation at dinner had lasted 3 hours, but the aftermath stretched through the night like a slow-motion explosion. I sat in my apartment staring out at the Hartford skyline, knowing I had just crossed a line that would reshape my life forever. My phone, which I had turned back on after an hour, buzzed constantly with increasingly frantic messages from Ashley. She alternated between offering bribes and making threats, her desperation becoming more obvious with each text. At 2 a.m, she called and left a sobbing voicemail claiming I was destroying innocent people's lives and that she would never forgive me if I went through with reporting our parents. What she didn't understand was that innocent people's lives were already being destroyed by my family's crimes. The decision had been made months ago when I first discovered the theft. Everything since then had been giving them opportunities to do the right thing voluntarily. At 7 a.m, I called Agent Rodriguez. "Agent Rodriguez, my name is Davis Hartwell. I need to report systematic embezzlement and investment fraud involving millions of dollars." Her voice was crisp and professional. "Mr. Hartwell, I'm going to transfer you to our financial crimes intake coordinator. Do you have evidence of these alleged crimes?" "Yes, ma'am. Extensive documentation, recorded confessions, and access to all relevant accounts and records." "Are you currently in any physical danger?" The question caught me off guard. "I don't think so. This is a white-collar matter." Mr. Hartwell, financial crimes often escalate when large amounts of money are involved. I'm going to have 2 agents meet with you this morning. Are you available at 9 a.m.? 3 hours later, I sat across from Agent Rodriguez and Agent James Chen in a conference room at the FBI's New Haven field office. Between us lay printed spreadsheets, recorded conversations transcribed by the Bureau's technology specialists, and bank records that painted a clear picture of systematic theft spanning 7 years. "Mr. Hartwell, I want to be clear about what you're telling us," Agent Rodriguez said. You're alleging that your parents and sister stole approximately $12.4 million from client accounts and used sophisticated methods to conceal the theft. Yes, ma'am. The number has grown since I first discovered it. I believe they've been accelerating the theft recently, probably because they know I might report them. Agent Chen leaned forward. You mentioned your sister's involvement in creating fraudulent marketing materials. Do you have examples of these? I pulled out copies of Ashley's investment reports, beautifully designed documents that described fictional overseas opportunities and innovative portfolio strategies. The reports were masterpieces of financial fiction, complete with fake performance charts and testimonials from satisfied investors. Ashley is brilliant at creating believable content, I explained. She convinced clients that their money was being invested in emerging markets and alternative assets when it was actually being transferred to shell companies controlled by my parents. Agent Rodriguez made notes while Agent Chen reviewed the documents. Mr. Hartwell, I have to ask, why did you wait so long to report this? You've known about the theft for 3 months. I had anticipated this question. I hoped my family would do the right thing voluntarily. I gave them multiple opportunities to confess and make restitution. I also needed time to document everything thoroughly, so you would have a complete case. And what changed your mind about waiting longer? Last night they threatened to frame me as a co-conspirator and made it clear they had no intention of stopping. I realized that every day I waited meant more money being stolen from innocent people. The agents exchanged glances and Agent Rodriguez nodded. Mr. Hartwell, based on what you've provided, we have probable cause to pursue this investigation. However, I need to warn you that cooperating with federal authorities against your own family will have serious personal consequences. Are you prepared for that? I thought about the Thompson manufacturing workers who had no idea their pension fund was being raided while they worked overtime to support their families. I thought about elderly clients who trusted the Hartwell name with their life savings. I thought about young families saving for their children's education, while my sister created fake reports showing their money-earning returns in accounts that didn't exist. Agent Rodriguez, my family made their choice when they decided to steal from people who trusted us. I'm just making sure there are consequences for that choice. All right then. We'll need you to continue normal activities while we prepare search warrants and coordinate with other agencies. Can you do that? How long will that take? Based on the scope of this case, probably 24 to 48 hours. I left the FBI office, knowing that my old life was officially over. That evening, I received the disowning texts from my parents and Ashley's mocking heart emoji. I responded with, "Okay," and set my phone down, realizing that my simple response wasn't surrender. It was the beginning of a countdown that my family had no idea was already in progress. What my parents and Ashley didn't know was that the FBI had been investigating suspicious activity in Connecticut's financial sector for months. My evidence had provided the missing pieces they needed to obtain search warrants, not just for Hartwell Financial Services, but for 3 other firms suspected of similar crimes. More importantly, Agent Rodriguez had shared my information with the Connecticut State Attorney General's office, which was preparing parallel charges under state racketeering statutes. My decision to cooperate had triggered a coordinated law enforcement response that would expose corruption far beyond my family's firm. That night, I drafted letters to extended family members, innocent colleagues, and client families who would be affected by what was about to happen. I couldn't send them yet, but writing them helped me prepare for the aftermath of a decision that would ripple through dozens of lives. At midnight, I received an encrypted message from Jake Morrison. Federal Task Force meeting at 0600, State AG office coordinating simultaneous raids. This is bigger than your family's firm. I sat in my dark apartment looking out at Hartford's sleeping skyline and realized that my simple word, "okay," had been the final domino in a chain reaction that would reshape Connecticut's financial industry. Justice was coming, and there was no stopping it now. I woke up at 5:30 a.m. and went through my normal morning routine. knowing it would probably be the last time I entered Hartwell Financial Services as an employee. Coffee shower, the same charcoal gray suit I wore every Tuesday, the same drive down Interstate 91 toward our office building in downtown Hartford. But nothing was normal about this Tuesday. My phone had been silent since my "okay" response, which meant my family was either planning their next move or had written me off completely. I suspected it was both. As I parked in the executive garage beneath our building, I wondered how many times I had walked this route without knowing I was entering a house built on stolen money. The office atmosphere was poisonous. My parents treated me with cold professionalism, acknowledging my presence only when absolutely necessary for business purposes. Ashley made a point of scheduling meetings that excluded me and whispering conspiratorially with colleagues who seemed to be getting their information about my personal problems secondhand. I endured pitying looks from innocent employees who had been told I was having family difficulties. Margaret Sullivan, our 62-year-old office manager who had worked for my parents since the firm's early days, pulled me aside during lunch. "Davis, honey, I don't know what's happening between you and your family, but I want you to know that everyone here respects your work and professionalism." Margaret's kindness hit me harder than my family's hostility. She had no idea that within hours she would lose her job when federal agents shut down the firm. She had no idea that her own retirement account had been used to hide evidence of stolen money. "Thank you, Margaret. That means more than you know. Your parents built something wonderful here, and I know you'll all work through whatever differences you're having." I wanted to warn her, but any deviation from normal behavior might alert my parents that something was happening. Instead, I spent my lunch break walking around downtown Hartford looking at the state capitol building where prosecutors were probably finalizing charges against my family. Meanwhile, unknown to anyone at Hartwell Financial Services agent Rodriguez and her team were conducting final preparations for the largest white-collar crime operation in Connecticut's history. The scope had expanded far beyond my family's firm, as investigators discovered connections to other accounting companies, local politicians who had received bribes, and even connections to organized crime groups who used legitimate investment firms to launder money. At 3 p.m., I received a call from an unknown number. "Davis, this is Thomas Thompson from Thompson Manufacturing." My heart stopped. Thompson was calling the office directly, which meant something had happened with his company's pension fund. "Mr. Thompson, how can I help you?" "I've been reviewing our quarterly statements, and I have some questions about our pension fund performance. Some of the investment vehicles listed don't match what we discussed last year." I realized that Thompson had started his own investigation of his employees' retirement accounts. The timing couldn't have been worse or better depending on your perspective. "Mr. Thompson, I'd prefer to discuss this in person. Could we meet tomorrow morning?" "Actually, I'm in Hartford today visiting other investment firms. Could we meet this afternoon?" I looked across the office at my father, who was on his phone with what appeared to be an urgent conversation. My mother was gathering documents from her office and putting them into a large briefcase. Ashley was nowhere to be seen. "Mr. Thompson, I'll meet you at your hotel in 30 minutes. Which hotel are you staying at?" "The Marriott downtown. But Davis, I'd prefer to meet at your office so we can review the actual account records together." The last thing I wanted was Thompson discovering the truth about his pension fund while sitting in our office 24 hours before federal agents were scheduled to raid the building. But I also knew that he deserved to know what had happened to his employees' money. "I'll be there in 15 minutes, I said. I told Margaret I was meeting with a client and drove to the Marriott, where I found Thomas Thompson in the hotel restaurant. He was a solid man in his 60s, wearing a flannel shirt and jeans, looking exactly like what he was, a factory owner who cared more about his employees than about impressing investors. "Davis, I've been running Thompson Manufacturing for 38 years, and I've never seen investment reports like these before. What exactly is Hartford Investment Solutions, and why are we investing $4 million with a company that doesn't seem to exist?" I sat across from him in the hotel restaurant, looking at a man whose trust my family had betrayed for years, and made a decision that would have horrified my parents. Mr. Thompson, there's something you need to know about your pension fund, and I think you should hear it from me rather than discovering it tomorrow. I told him everything. The stolen money, the fake investment reports, the shell companies, the 7 years of systematic theft. Thompson listened without interrupting, his face growing harder with each revelation. You're telling me that my employee's pension fund has been stolen? Yes, sir. About $4.2 million over 7 years. The money has been used to fund my family's lifestyle and keep the firm operating during difficult periods. Thomas Thompson stared at me for a long moment, then pulled out his phone and started making calls. Sarah, it's Tom. I need you to contact our attorney immediately and have him meet me in Hartford tonight. Yes, it's about the pension fund. No, I can't discuss it over the phone. When he hung up, he looked at me with a mixture of anger and sadness. Davis, do you understand what this means for my people? Some of them have worked for me for 30 years. This pension fund represents their security, their ability to retire with dignity. Yes, sir, I do understand. That's why I reported it to federal authorities. There will be raids tomorrow morning and restitution procedures will begin immediately. You reported your own family. Mr. Thompson, your employees trusted us with their future. My family violated that trust in the worst possible way. Someone had to speak up for people who didn't even know they were being victimized. Thompson nodded slowly. What's going to happen to you? I'll probably lose my job, my family, and my reputation. But your employees will get their money back, and this won't happen to anyone else. We shook hands in the hotel restaurant, and I saw respect in his eyes despite the terrible news I had delivered. Davis, you did the right thing. It couldn't have been easy. No, sir, it wasn't. I drove back to the office, knowing that Thompson was probably already contacting other business owners who used Hartwell Financial Services. By tomorrow morning, our phones would be ringing with panicked clients demanding answers about their accounts. At 7 p.m., I was packing up my office when Ashley appeared in my doorway. She looked terrible with smeared makeup and wrinkled clothes that suggested she had been crying or fighting or both. Davis, we need to talk. I don't think we have anything to discuss. Mom and Dad's attorneys think they can beat any charges if you withdraw your cooperation with the authorities. I'm authorized to offer you $2 million to disappear and start over somewhere else. I looked at my sister, this brilliant woman who had used her talents to create elaborate frauds instead of building something legitimate, and felt profoundly sad for what she had become. Ashley, in about 12 hours, federal agents are going to arrest our parents and probably you too. The state attorney general is filing racketeering charges. This isn't a negotiation anymore. It's a criminal investigation. Her facade cracked completely. How do you know that? I realized I had said too much, but it was too late to take it back. Because I've been cooperating for weeks, not days. Everything you Mom and Dad have done since I discovered the theft has been documented and recorded. Ashley stared at me in shock, finally understanding that I had been several steps ahead of them the entire time. You recorded us. I recorded every conversation where you discussed ongoing crimes or threatened witnesses. I have everything documented, Ashley. Everything. She broke down completely, sliding down my office door frame until she was sitting on the floor, sobbing into her hands. Davis, I can't go to prison. I can't survive that. Please, I'll testify against Mom and Dad. I'll do whatever you want. Just please help me. For the first time in months, I felt sorry for my sister. She had made terrible choices, but she was still the little girl who used to beg me to read her bedtime stories and help her with homework. Ashley, the only thing that might help you now is complete cooperation with the authorities. Tell them everything, help them recover every stolen dollar, and accept responsibility for what you've done. Will you put in a good word for me? I knelt down beside her on my office floor. I'll tell them you're cooperating, but Ashley, you need to understand that our relationship as brother and sister is over. You chose to help steal from innocent families. That's not something I can forgive or forget. She nodded through her tears, and I left her sitting in my office as I walked out of Hartwell Financial Services for the last time. At midnight, I received the encrypted message from Jake. Task force ready. Multiple agencies coordinating. This goes beyond Connecticut. I set my phone down and tried to sleep, knowing that in 6 hours my family's world would explode and my new life would begin. I woke up at 6 a.m. to the sound of helicopters. Looking out my apartment window, I could see news crews setting up near Hartwell Financial Services, which was visible from my building. Either someone had leaked information about the raids, or federal agents had tipped off the media to ensure maximum public attention. At exactly 7 a.m., my phone started buzzing with news alerts. FBI raids Connecticut financial firm in major fraud investigation. Federal agents arrest 3 family members in embezzlement scheme. Millions stolen from pension funds in sophisticated white-collar crime operation. I turned on the television and watched live coverage as FBI agents carried boxes of evidence out of my family's office building. The reporter described it as the largest financial crime investigation in Connecticut's history, involving multiple agencies and affecting dozens of clients across 3 states. Then I saw my parents. Robert and Linda Hartwell were led out of their office building in handcuffs, their faces covered by their hands, as reporters shouted questions. My father looked smaller than I remembered, hunched over and moving like an old man. My mother was crying openly, her usually perfect appearance disheveled and broken. Ashley was arrested separately at her apartment, and the footage showed her being placed in a police car while neighbors watched from their windows. She looked directly at one of the news cameras, her makeup smeared, and her expression a mixture of defiance and terror. My phone exploded with calls from reporters, extended family members, former colleagues, and clients who had seen the news coverage. I ignored most of them but answered when my uncle called. "Davis, what the hell is happening? The news is saying your parents stole millions of dollars." Uncle Patrick was my father's younger brother, a high school principal who had always looked up to Robert's business success. His voice was a mixture of disbelief and growing anger. "Uncle Pat, it's all true. They've been systematically stealing from client accounts for 7 years. I tried to get them to confess voluntarily, but they refused." "Are you telling me you turned in your own family?" "I'm telling you that I reported crimes that were destroying innocent people's lives. Thompson Manufacturing's pension fund was stolen, Uncle Pat. Hundreds of factory workers had their retirement security taken by our family." There was a long silence. Then Patrick's voice became quieter. "Davis, how long have you known about this?" 3 months. I spent that time documenting everything and trying to convince them to do the right thing." "Jesus Christ." Another pause. "You did the right thing, kid. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you did the right thing." Uncle Patrick was the first family member to support my decision, and his words meant more to me than he could know. But most other calls were less understanding. My cousin Jennifer screamed at me for destroying the family name. My Aunt Susan accused me of being jealous of my parents' success and trying to bring them down out of spite. The hardest call came from Margaret Sullivan, our office manager, who was crying so hard I could barely understand her. "Davis, they're saying the office is closed permanently and that all our jobs are gone. Is it true that your parents were stealing from clients?" "Yes, Margaret. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. But what about my retirement account? I've been putting money into the company plan for 20 years. My heart broke. Margaret's retirement account had been used as part of the cover-up with fake statements showing steady growth while her actual money was transferred to shell companies. She was approaching retirement age and had been counting on that money to live on. Margaret, the federal restitution process will help you recover everything that was stolen. It will take time, but you'll get your money back." "Davis, did you know about this when we talked yesterday?" The question was devastating because it forced me to acknowledge that I had known Margaret was about to lose everything while I pretended everything was normal. "Yes, I knew. I couldn't warn you without compromising the investigation." She hung up without saying goodbye, and I knew I had lost another relationship that had mattered to me. By afternoon, Agent Rodriguez called with an update. "Mr. Hartwell, your parents are refusing to cooperate. They've hired expensive attorneys and are claiming innocence despite the overwhelming evidence. Your sister, however, is asking to negotiate a cooperation agreement. What does that mean for the investigation? It means we'll recover more stolen money faster if Ashley provides information about hidden accounts and other participants. But it also means she'll receive reduced charges in exchange for testimony against your parents. And what about the clients who were victimized? That's why I'm calling. We need you to help us contact all affected families. Many of them don't even know their money was stolen because the fake statements showed positive returns. I spent the rest of the day helping federal agents understand the client base and identify families who needed to be contacted about their stolen accounts. Each name on the list represented a personal relationship my family had exploited trust that had been violated for money. At 8 p.m., exactly 24 hours after the disowning text, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Mom. I let it ring 3 times before answering. "Davis, please, you have to help us." Linda's voice was raw from crying, calling from the county jail where she was being held pending a bail hearing. "Help you how, Mom?" "Tell them this is all a misunderstanding. Tell them your father never meant to hurt anyone and that we were going to pay everything back. Mom, you stole $12.4 million from families who trusted us. We borrowed it. We always intended to pay it back with interest. Mom, you've been living in a house bought with stolen pension funds. You've been driving cars purchased with stolen college savings accounts. You bought Ashley's condo with money stolen from elderly clients. Davis, if you withdraw your testimony, our attorneys think we can win this case. Please, I'm begging you to save your family." I looked out my apartment window at the Hartford skyline, thinking about all the families across Connecticut who were just learning that their life savings had been stolen by people they trusted. Mom, I love you, but I can't help you avoid the consequences of choices you made for 7 years. Then you're not my son anymore. You already disowned me 24 hours ago, remember? You told me to talk to your lawyer from now on. There was a long silence, then Linda started crying again. Davis, I never meant that. We were angry and scared. Please don't let them destroy your family over money that we're already paying back. It's not about the money, Mom. It's about the fact that you were willing to steal from innocent people and then threaten me when I tried to stop you. Will you at least visit us in jail? I thought about Thompson Manufacturing's workers, who were just learning that their pension fund had been raided. I thought about Margaret Sullivan, who had lost her retirement security 3 years before she planned to stop working. I thought about dozens of other families whose trust had been violated by people who were supposed to protect their financial futures. Mom, I'll think about it. I hung up and immediately received a text from Ashley. We need to talk. I looked at the message and smiled for the first time in months. This was only the beginning. Ashley's text came with an address Starbucks on Main Street, downtown Hartford. I arrived first and chose a table in the corner where we could talk privately while remaining in a public place. When Ashley walked in 20 minutes later, she looked like a different person from the polished marketing executive I had worked with for years. Her usually perfect blonde hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her designer clothes were wrinkled and stained, and she wore no makeup to cover the dark circles under her red-rimmed eyes. She looked around the coffee shop nervously before joining me at the corner table. Davis, thank you for meeting me. What do you want, Ashley? She pulled out her phone and placed it face down on the table between us, a gesture that struck me as ironic since I had been recording our family conversations for months. I want to explain what really happened and see if we can work together to minimize the damage to everyone involved. Ashley, federal agents have enough evidence to convict all 3 of you without my continued cooperation. The damage has already been done. But you could influence the prosecutors to be more lenient if you vouched for our character and emphasized that we were always planning to restore the stolen funds. I stared at my sister, amazed that even after being arrested and facing federal charges, she was still trying to manipulate the situation through careful messaging and relationship management. Ashley, do you understand what you've done to innocent families? Davis, nobody was actually harmed. The accounts showed positive returns, the clients were happy with their statements, and we were ahead of schedule on paying everything back. Nobody was harmed. Ashley Thompson Manufacturing's pension fund is short $4.2 million. Those are real people with real families who trusted us with their retirement security. But they're going to get their money back through the restitution process. They're going to get their money back because I reported your crimes and federal agents forced you to stop stealing. If I hadn't spoken up, how much more would you have stolen? Ashley looked uncomfortable for the first time since sitting down. Davis, we had a plan to restore everything within 2 years. The market recovery was stronger than expected, so we were actually ahead of schedule. Show me the plan. What? Show me this detailed plan. You had to restore $12.4 million in stolen money. Show me the timeline, the funding sources, the account-by-account restoration schedule. Ashley fumbled with her phone but didn't pull up any documents. It wasn't written down formally, but Dad had calculated everything. I realized that even now, facing federal prison time, Ashley was still lying to herself about the scope and intent of their crimes. There had been no restoration plan because they had never intended to stop stealing. Ashley, here's what I think really happened. You started with small amounts during the recession, telling yourselves it was temporary. But stealing millions of dollars creates a lifestyle that's hard to give up. The house, the cars, the vacations, the expensive clothes. You became addicted to living off other people's money. That's not fair, Davis. You don't understand the pressure Dad was under to keep the firm profitable. I understand that he chose to steal rather than downsize the business or take a smaller salary. Ashley leaned forward, switching tactics from justification to desperation. Davis, our attorneys think they can get reduced charges if you testify that we were trying to fix the situation before you reported us. But that would be perjury, Ashley. You weren't trying to fix anything. You were trying to silence me so you could continue stealing. It's not perjury if it's your interpretation of our family discussions. I pulled out my own phone and showed her a file folder labeled Ashley Recordings. Would you like me to play back your interpretation of our family discussions? I have 47 hours of recorded conversations where you, Mom, and Dad discuss ongoing crimes and methods to avoid detection. Ashley stared at the phone in horror. You recorded everything. I recorded every conversation where you discussed criminal activity. I have you threatening to frame me as a co-conspirator. I have Dad offering bribes for my silence. I have Mom discussing which clients were least likely to notice missing money. My sister slumped back in her chair, finally understanding the scope of evidence against our family. Davis, I can't survive in prison. You know I can't handle that kind of environment. For a moment, I felt sorry for her. Ashley had always been fragile beneath her confident exterior, and the thought of her in federal prison was genuinely painful. Ashley, if you want my help, there's only one thing you can do. What's that? Tell federal investigators about every crime our family committed, help them recover every stolen dollar, and take full responsibility for your role in the fraud. No excuses, no justifications, no attempts to minimize what you did. And if I do that, you'll put in a good word for me with the prosecutors. I'll tell them you cooperated fully and seemed genuinely remorseful. But Ashley, I won't lie to help you avoid consequences for choices you made as an adult. Ashley started crying again, and I handed her napkins from the dispenser on our table. Davis, I'm scared. You should be scared. You helped steal millions of dollars from innocent families. There should be consequences for that. But we're family. Ashley, you stopped being my family the moment you chose to help cover up crimes against people who trusted us. She wiped her eyes and looked at me with a mixture of anger and desperation. Fine. If that's how you want to play this, I'll tell the prosecutors that you knew about the account transfers for years and approved many of them yourself. I had expected this threat, and I was prepared for it. Ashley, I have documentation showing exactly when I discovered the theft and exactly when I reported it. I also have recordings of you threatening to make false accusations if I didn't help you avoid prosecution. You're recording this conversation too, aren't you? Yes, I am. Ashley stood up abruptly, knocking over her untouched coffee. Davis, I hope you're proud of yourself for destroying your own family. Ashley, I didn't destroy our family. Our parents destroyed our family when they decided to steal from innocent people, and you destroyed our relationship when you chose to help them. She walked out of the Starbucks without looking back, leaving me alone at the corner table with 2 cups of coffee and the weight of decisions that had cost me everyone I had grown up loving. But as I sat there, my phone buzzed with a text message from Agent Rodriguez. Major development. Other accounting firms being investigated based on your evidence. Your courage-exposed network affecting hundreds of families. I realized that my decision to speak up had consequences far beyond my family's firm. The evidence I provided had helped federal agents identify patterns of fraud across Connecticut's financial industry, leading to investigations that would protect countless families from future theft. An hour later, I received a call from Uncle Patrick. Davis, I owe you an apology. For what, Uncle Pat? I've been making some calls to other family members, and it turns out several of us had suspicious activity in our investment accounts that we didn't understand. Your cousin Mark's college fund showed negative returns for 3 years, while your parents claimed it was earning 8% annually. I felt sick. Uncle Pat, I had no idea they had stolen from family members too. Davis, they stole from everyone. Family clients, employees, anyone who trusted them with money. What you did wasn't betraying your family. You were protecting all of us from criminals who happened to share our last name. Uncle Patrick's words provided more comfort than anything else that had happened in the past 24 hours. For the first time, I began to believe that I had made the right choice, even though it cost me the parents and sister I had grown up loving. That evening, I received a call from Thomas Thompson. Davis, I wanted to thank you for your honesty yesterday. My attorney has been in contact with federal prosecutors, and it looks like we'll recover most of our pension fund through the restitution process. Mr. Thompson, I'm just glad your employees will get their money back. Davis, there's something else. Several other business owners in Connecticut have contacted me after seeing the news coverage. We're organizing a support group for families who were victimized by financial fraud. Would you be willing to speak to our group about how you recognized the warning signs? I thought about Thompson Manufacturing's workers, about Margaret Sullivan's stolen retirement account, about all the innocent families who had trusted the Hartwell name with their most precious assets. Mr. Thompson, I'd be honored to help however I can. As I hung up the phone, I realized that losing my criminal family had opened the door to relationships with the people my family had victimized. Instead of being complicit in ongoing crimes, I could help families recover from the damage my parents and sister had caused. For the first time in months, I felt hopeful about my future. 6 months later, I sat in federal court watching my parents receive their sentences. Robert Hartwell was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison plus full restitution to all victims. Linda received 8 years for her role in the conspiracy and money laundering. Ashley, who had eventually cooperated fully with investigators, received 3 years plus 5 years of supervised probation. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, addressed my family directly before imposing the sentences. Mr. and Mrs. Hartwell, you violated the most sacred trust in the financial industry, the trust between advisors and their clients. You stole from families planning for retirement, parents, saving for their children's education, and workers depending on you to protect their pension funds. Your crimes were not victimless, and your sentences reflect the serious damage you caused to dozens of innocent families. When Ashley was sentenced, she looked directly at me from the defendant's table. Her expression was no longer angry or manipulative. Instead, she looked genuinely ashamed for the first time since our confrontation in the coffee shop. After the sentencing, I met with Agent Rodriguez and Thomas Thompson outside the courthouse. Davis, your cooperation led to the recovery of over $15 million in stolen funds, Agent Rodriguez said. We also identified 3 other accounting firms involved in similar schemes which led to additional investigations and recoveries. Thompson shook my hand firmly. Davis, because of your courage, 230 Thompson manufacturing employees will receive full restitution for their stolen pension contributions. You gave them back their retirement security. The aftermath of my family's crimes had indeed been far-reaching, but so had the positive consequences of my decision to report them. The FBI investigation expanded to uncover a network of corrupt financial advisors, local politicians, who had taken bribes and even connections to organized crime groups who used legitimate investment firms to launder money. Most importantly, the victim advocacy work I had started with Thompson Manufacturing grew into a full-time consulting practice. I used my insider knowledge of financial fraud to help other white-collar crime victims navigate the complex federal restitution process and rebuild their financial security. Jake Morrison left the federal prosecutor's office to become my business partner, bringing legal expertise that complemented my understanding of financial crimes from the perpetrator's perspective. Together, we established Hartwell Recovery Services, helping families across New England recover from investment fraud and rebuild trust in their financial advisors. Margaret Sullivan, our former office manager, became our first employee. The federal restitution process had restored her retirement account, and she wanted to use her experience to help other victims understand their rights and options. Davis, she told me during her job interview, I was angry at you for months after the arrests, but when I received my full restitution check plus interest, I realized you saved my retirement by having the courage to speak up when it mattered. The extended family relationships slowly healed as the full scope of my parents' crimes became clear. Uncle Patrick became one of our strongest supporters, referring other fraud victims to our consulting practice. Cousin Mark, whose college fund had been stolen, wrote letters to federal prosecutors praising my cooperation in recovering his educational savings. Even some of my former colleagues at Hartwell Financial Services eventually understood my decision. 3 of them joined other legitimate firms and referred clients to our victim advocacy practice when they encountered families who had been defrauded by other companies. 1 year after the sentencing, I made my first visit to my parents in federal prison. The conversation was difficult, but marked the beginning of a healing process that would take many years. Davis, my mother said across the prison visiting room table, I need you to know that your father and I understand why you reported us. It took us months to accept it, but you were protecting innocent families from criminals who happened to be your parents. Robert looked older and grayer than I remembered, but his eyes were clearer than they had been in years. Son, I want to apologize for the position we put you in. No child should have to choose between family loyalty and protecting innocent people from their own parents' crimes. Dad, I didn't want to destroy our family. You didn't destroy our family, Davis. Your mother and I destroyed our family when we chose to steal from people who trusted us. You just made sure there were consequences for our choices. My parents were attending financial ethics classes and addiction counseling in prison, working to understand how their pursuit of wealth had corrupted their judgment and destroyed their relationships. Linda had started a support group for white-collar criminals' families, helping other inmates maintain connections with their children despite their crimes. Ashley was released after 18 months for exceptional cooperation with ongoing investigations. She had provided information that led to the recovery of an additional $4 million in hidden assets, and helped prosecutors understand the sophisticated methods used by other financial fraud networks. When she was released, Ashley called me from a halfway house in New Haven. Davis, I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness, but I want you to know that I understand what I did was wrong. Not just illegal, but morally wrong, really. Ashley, what are your plans when you complete the program? I'm going to testify before the Connecticut State Legislature about financial fraud prevention. They're considering new regulations for accounting firms, and they want someone with inside experience to explain how these crimes happen. My sister's testimony helped pass the strongest financial oversight legislation in Connecticut's history, requiring independent audits of client accounts and mandatory reporting systems that would make future embezzlement much more difficult to hide. 2 years after the federal raids, I received an invitation that changed my perspective on everything that had happened. Thompson Manufacturing was hosting their annual retiree Christmas party, fully funded for the first time in years, thanks to the recovered pension funds. "Davis," Thomas Thompson said when he called with the invitation, "our retirees voted unanimously to invite you as our guest of honor. These folks want to thank the man who gave them back their retirement security." The Christmas party was held in Thompson Manufacturing's main facility, decorated with lights and wreaths that reflected genuine celebration rather than forced holiday cheer. I met dozens of elderly couples who had worked for 30 or 40 years, saving money each paycheck for retirement that had been stolen by my family, and returned because I found the courage to speak up. "Mr. Hartwell," said Eleanor Martinez, whose husband had worked as a machinist for 36 years. "When we learned that our pension money had been stolen, we thought our retirement was over. But because you reported the theft, we got every penny back, plus interest. We're able to enjoy our golden years instead of working until we die." Harold Johnson, 82 years old and recently retired after 4 decades as a foreman, pulled me aside during dinner. "Son, I heard that reporting those crimes cost you your family relationships. I want you to know that what you did saved dozens of families from financial ruin. You're a hero to everyone in this room." Looking around the decorated factory floor, seeing elderly couples dancing to Christmas music while knowing their retirement security was intact, I finally understood the true consequences of my decision to choose integrity over family loyalty. I hadn't destroyed my family by reporting their crimes. I had saved dozens of other families from continued victimization by people they trusted. 3 years after the federal raids, I received a letter that brought the story full circle. It was from Ashley, who was working as a fraud prevention consultant for the Connecticut State Attorney General's office. "Davis." Her letter read, "I'm writing to tell you that our family's case has been used as a training example for federal agents investigating financial crimes. The sophisticated recording techniques you used and the systematic documentation you compiled have become a model for other whistleblowers facing similar situations. More importantly, the victim advocacy practice you established has helped over 300 families recover stolen assets and rebuild their financial security. You turned our family's greatest shame into a source of healing and protection for innocent people. I know our relationship as siblings may never fully recover from the choices I made, but I want you to know that I'm proud to be related to someone who had the courage to do the right thing when it mattered most." As I finished reading Ashley's letter, I realized that the painful decision I made in my apartment that evening, responding to my family's disowning text with a simple, "Okay," had led to consequences beyond anything I could have imagined. Losing my corrupt family nucleus had allowed me to build genuine relationships with people who shared my values and commitment to protecting innocent families from financial predators. Justice had been served, but more importantly, dozens of families had been protected from continued harm. The Thompson Manufacturing workers could retire with dignity. Margaret Sullivan could enjoy her golden years without financial stress. Hundreds of other families across New England had recovered stolen assets and learned to trust financial advisors again. Sometimes protecting your family means standing against them when they choose wrong. True loyalty means having the courage to do what's right, even when it costs everything you thought mattered. Justice delayed often means justice denied for innocent victims, and sometimes one person's courage can save hundreds of others from continued harm. The greatest victories aren't always the ones that bring you closer to the people you love. Sometimes they're the ones that protect innocent strangers from the people you love when those people choose to become criminals. Have you ever faced a situation where doing the right thing meant standing against your own family? What gave you the strength to choose integrity over loyalty? Or what held you back from making that choice? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and share it with someone who might benefit from hearing about the power of choosing courage over comfort. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about ordinary people facing extraordinary moral challenges. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes the most important victories are the ones that cost us everything, but save others from harm we could have prevented. May you always find the courage to protect innocent people, even when it means standing alone against those you love.